Welcome back.
Thanks. I think Twitter's just getting more stable, but still have these like weird connections. Where are you guys? Where are you guys based right now?
So I myself am in Thailand actually. So it's like 11 p.m. for me. What about you?
I'm in New York right now. Man, I'm jealous. Are you in Bangkok?
Yeah, I am in Bangkok. Yep, I just moved back here actually recently.
Really? It's growing on me. Like definitely one of the favorite places.
Yeah, where are you? Majority based out of New York, or are you just there for a visit?
So I've been like spending more time in New York for sure. Thinking a little bit more on San Francisco as well. But before that, I was across Asia, so Singapore, Thailand. I was actually there like 2 months ago.
Nice. So what brought you to New York?
I think just generally the builder tech community, as well as like a lot of Solana people I know here. I really
Nice.
like the vibe of the city, so I just stayed here. But Thailand, just the cost of living is just so much.
Yeah, so much cheaper. Yeah. That was kind of my mindset actually. So I graduated from university earlier in June, and then I finished that up, and then I began working for a couple Web3 jobs. And
Right.
so then I was like, cost of living being very low, living in a place like Thailand while still making a U.S. based wage sounds like a pretty lucrative opportunity. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of
I
sense.
went with it. Yeah, because otherwise I was planning on going to Austin, Texas, and that was definitely just expensive, but fun.
Yeah, and I think like for those who haven't been there in a while, like I feel like the food, the city, like everywhere you go, you see like these small Michelin restaurants that are just like so affordable, but at the same time like amazing. So
Yeah.
that's what I like.
100%. It's definitely a very different experience. So um, I was born in Thailand originally, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm actually half Thai, half Austrian. So I have like the opportunity of being able to have like two different citizenships and two different passports. And so I've been doing a little bit of traveling through like Europe, and then just recently
Right.
settled down in Thailand. But I gotta say, like the culture here is like really cool. Everyone's like pretty nice. Someone has tried to scam me like twice now, but it is what it is, I guess. But overall, it's been a great experience.
Yeah, definitely want to go back there, like probably early next year when it gets a little bit colder in the city.
Mm. How's the weather right now? Still bearable?
It's actually not too bad. This year's like pretty warm, but not getting any snow either. It's like
Interesting.
14 degrees right now, actually. Crazy.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Actually, I would have expected it to be worse. I was it Thailand has been kind of weird. Actually, it's been rainier during the season, even though it's supposed
Right,
to be more like the dry season. So that's been kind of a surprise for us.
right. Like 2 months ago when I was there, it was like just thunderstorms every single day.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Um,
Yeah, but it's definitely interesting because I mean, a lot of places have just been experiencing such like odd weather patterns that like I just don't expect it to get better, but worse as the years come on. So we'll have to see.
right.
Hopefully that's not the case, but I'm being realistic here.
Yeah, just a new norm.
Yep, I guess so. But I mean, it felt like for a second there, a lot of people were talking about climate change and like the issues that it'll have for us, but then it kind of like got swept under the rug, and then new things came out. So I'm interested in seeing when the next news cycle hits, and we're back on the picture of. Oh, he's gone. Sad. We'll wait for him to come back. But I think it's very interesting, right? Like we are very cyclical as human beings in the sense of like what we pay attention to and focus on goes often in periodic spurts. So, and that's so like representative of like how our news cycle works as well. That I'm very interested in seeing what the next big thing is that like we kind of focus on. Because if we really think about it, in like the last 4 years, we had some major things happen to us, and like I've already forgotten about like a majority of what that was because now I'm all focused on crypto. Hey, welcome back.
Dropped back out the last bit, but yeah, totally agree. Like I feel like the last I guess 1 year for me has been like just flying by. Um, Everything that happened in space is kind of a fast forward of this cycle as well.
Yes, 100%. This space moves so quickly. It's like pretty crazy to really think about. Because like I mean, how long have you guys? I guess it's like 11:09. We can kind of get into the kind of the discussion now. I can ask you guys some real questions, but um, for everyone who's tuning into the recording, um, continue listening on. For everyone who's tuning in live, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to join us today. It's a pleasure to actually see some people in the audience because it just kind of helps out a little bit more. Um, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and let us know. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I guess to kind of start off the question, I wanted to kind of ask you to tell me a little bit more about yourself personally, if you wouldn't mind divulging some information, and then also like give us like a general pitch on your project, um, and tell me a little bit more about how long you guys have been operating in the space.
Yeah, of course. So coming back to the question, Mirror World's been up and coming for the past 12 months. We actually started out as a casual Web3 gaming publishing platform. So we produced four casual games on mobile in the last 12 or 13 months or so. And during that span, we realized that we were making Unity games, Android games, iOS games, and cross-platform development in Web3, especially when it comes to mobile, was a pain really. Every single product would take us an extra 1 to 2 months to set up on the back end, and everything from the syncer to metadata querying, all of those were a little bit more confusing than Web2, right? And when we were developing games in Web2 or applications in Web2, we had existing stacks like Firebase, Xsola for payments, Stripe for payment, such and so forth. So we realized that in order for us to really achieve that next milestone and really bring in, the next million or tens of millions of users, you either had to have a great funding environment and a huge team like StepN did, or you really had to utilize the existing stack and the composability of these Web3, smart contracts as well as backend infrastructure, and really bring them together in a way that is seamless and full stack. So that's when we started, offering some of our clients the service-oriented APIs that we did for our own games to solve their development needs. So essentially, that's how Mirror World came to be. And before Mirror World, I was at a Y Combinator backed startup, also invested by Galaxy and Makers Fund. So I was a product VP there. And before that, I was at TikTok, heading strategy and also a part of their SaaS platform internally. So kind of got to see the cutting edge of consumer facing products as
Hmm.
well as mobile growth in the last couple years.
Yeah, wow, that's super interesting actually. So like, what made you want to step out of the traditional like, let's say Web2 space with your TikTok experience and go into Web3?
Yeah, I was working outside of Asia for a little bit,
Hmm.
and we had long hours and exciting growth for the company.
Yeah.
But I still thought it was too slow. So believe it or not, I thought that even at the speed that ByteDance, which is TikTok's mother company, was growing, I thought that a lot of regulations, compliance, and a lot of the existing tech stack were a little bit cumbersome for fast iteration, right? And I wanted to be in a space where everything was so new so that we can recreate the existing structure. You can redefine how apps are developed. You can redefine how protocols are interacted with. And I think that was when I discovered both artificial intelligence and Web3. So I went to a company that was at the cross section of it and started Mirror World.
Nice. No, I love that. It's definitely been very interesting to kind of see like artificial technology being implemented in like everyday users' lives, at least from like a social perspective, right? Like with OpenAI's chat, what GLT, GLB, what was it?
ChatGPT.
Yeah, GPT. Yeah, exactly. It's been very interesting to see the amount of people like actually kind of like diving into that and like start using the technologies. But like it's crazy because it's not necessarily. It felt like before there was like a trickle out of usage in like let's say Mid Journey and like Dolly, but now it's like the dam is burst and now everyone is like becoming involved with this technology, right? Like with
Yeah,
AI
definitely.
specifically.
I think it was interesting because defining how it was interacted with, it was something that people were interested in, but didn't really know where to start off, right? So, for
Yeah.
example, all of these products had interesting algorithms on the back end,
Hmm.
but the product experience differed a wide range, right? DALI is essentially just a user interface, while Midjourney is more of a Discord interaction that allows you to
Mm.
see the progression of the image throughout the interaction. Um, so I think like with ChatGPT, OpenAI is doing what they do best is essentially giving that interface of a simple chat as a indexer or as well as a kind of a search engine to
Yeah.
really like the end user.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. It's definitely been interesting to see that progression for use, but it makes sense, right? Like it's like getting it into the people's hands so that people can start making a spectacle out of it. Seems like the best way to go about like onboarding new users and growing interest and excitement.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just gonna go on tangent on ChatGPT for the
Yeah.
last bit, but right now it just crossed 1 million users, which if you look at the 7.8 billion population we have, is around 0.01% of the entire population, while something like TikTok, which we work for, was 1.5 billion users. So that's around 20% of the total population. And if you look at the gap between the two, if you think that everyone can have a search engine with ChatGPT at one point in time, that's actually 1,500 times growth. Even at the current,
Yeah.
valuation, right? Like that's an enormous opportunity that you don't really think about because you see all this hype on Twitter, on crypto Twitter as well. But
Mm.
really, like it's just the starting point of this general adoption of mass artificial intelligence.
100%. Well, I mean, so tell me more about how you guys leverage artificial intelligence into your SDK and into like what you guys are developing. Can you tell
Yeah,
me a little bit
so
more about that?
so that was very interesting. The beginning of our project, we were actually using NLP algorithms to help us develop these virtual games. So we
Mm.
utilized things like GPT-J, so different models of natural language processing, and made our NFTs interactable. And we created a development system where our games would have these little characters that could be leveled up by interaction with them, and during that process, we deployed our own NFT collection, our own marketplace, and our own front end for these developments to be, user friendly, right?
Yeah.
But we soon realized that, it might be a little bit too early to go in on this kind of full AI trend, while the development kits and the platforms themselves are not mature enough. So developing for mobile with crypto is already really difficult. So we wanted to
Mm.
solve that first question of essentially onboarding new users into crypto, as well as getting them to convert within the application itself, rather than focusing on some of the algorithms that we were developing before.
Gotcha. Okay. So then how have you guys gone about kind of like bridging in new users into the space? Do you like look for pre-existing Web2 companies to work with, or how have you guys been doing that?
Yeah, so um, well, I think it has to start off with like what problem is it that we think is worth solving for
Mm.
the existing ecosystem. So I think there are three major problems that we see with the developer journey when whether a studio or a developer is trying to build something on top of this crypto backend that we really value, right? So
Hmm.
the first question is really onboarding experience. The status quo in the space is really you could have social login with something like Magic Link or Web3 Auth, but they charge essentially by user count, and at a large enough volume, that price becomes
Yeah.
relatively expensive, right?
Yeah.
And I think everyone is aware of that model where it's not really aligned with the end developer's need, where the conversion is not happening at the onboarding stage. It's happening at where like users are transacting with the chain, minting or purchasing your assets. So that's the first problem where we solve by and offering a free and open source SDK on the social login side, right?
That's
So
it.
we want users to enter with no friction, generate an MPC wallet or a non-custodial wallet for them right there and there, within the login phase.
Hmm.
But users shouldn't be able to feel anything different. So the second problem that we see is geographic coverage. So we see that even though we might be in the States or in Thailand, most of the crypto users are so distributed across the world that they use
Yeah.
different types of payment systems. And as a gaming company, we see a lot of clients, come into us and say that, hey, MoonPay just gave us a 3 month backlog. We can integrate with them for credit card payments for on-ramp, because a lot of our users are Web2 users. But the rest of them, like majority of our community, are scattered around Philippines, Thailand, all across the world. How can we really provide a user-friendly experience for the on-ramp for these guys? Otherwise, we would just have to forego, the players that don't have a bank account or don't have a credit card, right?
Yeah.
And that happens to be a majority of them because in Southeast Asia, for example, 30 to 40% of them are banked, and the rest of them are actually unbanked, meaning that
Hmm.
they use something like Gcash or GoPay. Um, so we aggregate those services together within our wallet SDK, so that as a gaming company, you don't have to go through the hassle of talking to all these gateways. And then the last problem that we see, which is a major problem we think in space right now, is that there's no conversion or revenue generated by gaming companies. So what they do end up doing is launching assets on something like Magic Eden
Yeah.
or OpenSea, which is almost like launching a product on Amazon. There's nothing wrong with it,
Hmm.
but when you have your own utility, such as gaming content, you ideally wanted to drive consumption directly within your marketplace, right? So
Yeah.
your users are more, loyal to your gameplay, as well as there's a conversion funnel through the gaming experience itself. And just like how in traditional gaming you would have digital asset sales after you play the game for a little bit, and right now that is just not usable. And every time your user leave your application to go to something like a OpenSea or Magic Eden, you're essentially losing conversion through that funnel. So that's the third stage of from a centralized platform to a self-branded or white label marketplace solution, and that's where we see the most demand from gaming companies. And when I say gaming companies, it's not the larger conglomerates were
Hmm.
relatively 10 to 20 people SMBs or individual developers or just like studios below the number of maybe 30 people. They don't want to spend a ton of time on that back end, but want to focus on gaming content.
Gotcha. Interesting. So you're making it easier for both the developer as well as the users to experience a seamless interaction within like the game experience itself, right? I feel like that's super important. I think it's like really valuable to create a type of frictionless experience for users because I mean you're right. Like the way it's set up now is not quite sustainable, and but I would have to argue that we just haven't quite seen any games leverage um, any systems that work, right? I mean, a lot of the games that we've had are still like very early and don't necessarily have standards in place for which to kind of showcase the right processes in which a game should go about creating experiences, guiding users into the game, and then having them kind of like play further on and then build out into NFTs. Um,
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think one reason for that, however, is essentially if you're launching your assets, on platforms that are
mm,
uh, liquidity order books, then you are also relying on the market condition.
true.
So the experiment time is also lengthened because people are afraid to drop their collection on these marketplaces when the demand is low because there's no natural demand coming from the app itself. So
Mm,
in traditional gaming, you're not going to care like when you release your products because you
yeah.
can just calculate the CPC, CPI, and just calculate the cost to return and just generate enough revenue from the game itself. But now, like the experiment time are lengthened.
Yeah.
On average, on App Store, usually an app only takes 2 months to roll out from development, first day of development to the end of it. But now we're looking at maybe 6 months or 8 months of it being rolled out, and people are just delaying that process.
That's a very good point. Yeah. I I think it's just where I think we're finally getting to the point now where people are looking at the fundamentals of what it is to be a Web3 game and are finally like taking the chance to restructure that, right? I mean, like that's what I think the best opportunity that has presented us within this bear market is that for projects to start rethinking what hasn't been working and what has been working up till this point, and like reinstating best practices, building out a game that actually has valuable user experience and content beyond simply just having like an NFT collection that's supposed to generate like social hype because it's not sustainable and it doesn't work anymore. And that's apparent within where we are now in the ecosystem. So it'll be refreshing to see more better projects, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well then more on. So you mentioned this earlier, but you said that you guys developed games before. Are you now just focused solely on the SDK and not necessarily on your guys' own in-house games?
Yeah, great question. So we still have one casual game running, which is doing pretty
Gotcha.
good with the cost of acquisition that we were able to generate with our own SDK. So we're gonna keep that running and doing some live ops for that game. But we've seen a lot of inbound demand for our solution, so we started to drift our focus to the to B side of things, where we want to make it easier and easier for developers to start building directly on top of the platform. And for like we actually don't have a BD team, so unlike a
Mm,
lot of the solutions in the space where they're signing up a lot of new games, pitching everyone, we want to make that onboarding experience self-service first, and
gotcha.
then grow the customer base from there.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so how big is your guys' team right now, and like what kind of like aspects of the structure, do each individual comprise? I guess. So how many people are you gonna have on your business facing side? How many people do you have developing the product? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we were a team of 15 on the infra side, and then
Mm,
eight on the gaming side. And because we decided to solely focus on SDK, we
yeah.
actually downsized to 15, so solely focusing on the two developer and two business side. And amongst that, we have a engineering team of nine people. Operations plus community management is around two people, and then we have admin, accounting, stuff like that.
Mm,
Um, Product is probably the most important thing for us. So around a 10 people team of a 15 people organization is on product engineering.
gotcha. Okay. Cool. And then so. Oh, I just had a really good question that I really wanted to ask and just slipped my mind entirely.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, it's so
Happens
frustrating.
all the time though.
It is what it is, I guess. But I guess it wasn't that important. So then, uh, God, wow, I'm just like drawing a blank on that. That's terrible. So then, I guess kind of bringing it back then to how you guys kind of like operate in a sense of like, do you guys solely operate on Solana? Like, what blockchains does your SDK work for? And if you're only on one chain currently, do you have plans to kind of like grow that out into the future?
Yeah, so our framework is actually created to support multi-chain smart
Gotcha.
contract deployments. However, we always prioritize customer needs. So
Mm,
the most inbound that we saw when we first started are actually coming from Solana projects. It
mm,
might be because of the adoption curve that Solana saw in the last year. At the same time, it also could be because the infrastructure stack was not as mature there, so there were more inbound demand for new solutions.
gotcha.
So we deployed on Solana, and we have a great partnerships with some games on Solana itself as well. In addition to that, I think we are exploring where the next wave of inbound is coming in from. I
Mm,
can't say too much about the next chain that that we're seeing a lot of demands from, but definitely something on our mind.
gotcha. Okay. And then so then, has there been like a relatively high level of demand for what you guys have been creating here? I mean, just like across the board, not doesn't necessarily have to be just for one chain, but obviously you were saying that you guys don't have necessarily too many resources directed towards like business development. So it seems that you guys have a lot of requests coming in already.
Yeah, for sure. So individual developers, the intent that we've seen is actually really positive. So
Mm,
as a data point, we launched our first beta version only in September. So beginning mid of September, and we had a very high churn in the beginning of that because our onboarding flow is terrible. But the first month we saw like 200 signups and 100 developers using our APIs,
Nice.
and then through since then we relaunched in October. So we did a 2 week sprint, just reiterated onboarding, decreased churn, and right now we're at 480 signups, and half of them are using our APIs already. So around 250, which throughout the 3 months time that we launched, I think is pretty good progress to show the
Yeah,
traction for something like that.
100%. And you guys haven't seen like a downtrend in interest since like bearish sentiment has kind of set in place even more?
Not at all, actually. So I think it makes more sense because when everyone starts growing aware of cost and speed to market, and
Mm,
they're not expecting products to launch on something like Magic Eden and OpenSea to generate a lot of volume, right? Then they are starting to think about what other ways can I decrease costs and really increase the efficiency of my product. And that's when they start looking for things like ours, especially because a lot of these, I think, web and client side games might have Elixir as a launcher, but they're also
mm,
expecting the next wave of mobile games to be a majority of distribution, right?
yeah, 100%. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I guess it's a perfect testament to like the bearish market being time for builders to really thrive and actually lay a solid foundation for when the new wave of users finally come back into the ecosystem. So it's a good sign then that people are still actually building.
Yeah, for sure. I think people are really active, and especially we see that maybe before there were more of a geographic focus in terms of, let's say, Solana, for example, there were a lot of European and U.S. projects, but now I
Mm,
think with like the likes of Super Team as well as more gaming projects kind of expanding to other regions, we see a trend of global adoption for some of the stack that we offer.
100%. So if you can give us some like notable names, or not necessarily notable names, but like the kind of projects that you're proud to be partnered with that are actually using or leveraging your SDK, who would
Yeah,
those be?
yeah, for sure. So the games, there's one FPS game that we just signed recently called Rage Effect.
Mm,
Really like their gameplay. Check them out. They are a first-person shooter, almost triple A quality visuals, and they are building on Unity. So our Unity SDK makes it really easy to deploy. We also have other use cases for something like a dating application, for example. There's a Web3
mm,
dating application built by Canoe Finance that uses their swap protocols and token protocols, and is built on top of our SDK as well. And we're looking at a couple more partnerships in terms of there are onboarding flow for gambling apps. There are shooting games that utilizes our NFT minting and marketplace. So all kinds of applications, and because we're a full stack solution, what we have to do is just make tutorials for everyone to figure out like different use cases. But really, I think it's the diversity is what we thrive at.
gotcha. So then you're not solely just focused on like game development, I guess, right? If you just said dating app, that's a pretty different wheelhouse. Do you see a lot of projects kind of reaching out in regard to like outside of the Web3 game space then?
Yeah, so I think there are gamification elements within the
Mm,
stack. For example, Step In was actually more of a like lifestyle,
yeah,
game and developed on Flutter as well, right? So I wouldn't call that necessarily a gaming application, but it falls under the general entertainment category.
hmm,
And the reason why, like right now, we are not kind of generalizing is because we think that there are a lot of new use cases that we haven't explored. And
for sure.
however, the vertical that we're going to focus on in the next probably 12 to 18 months is going to be specifically gaming, and we want to make the experience for gaming clients extremely good, right? Like
Mm,
whatever feature requests that we get from gaming is going to be the ones that we prioritize.
gotcha. That definitely makes sense, and that's a good point. Interesting though. Yeah, I guess I never really considered like the gamification aspect of Steppen, right? It is in itself still technically a game, even though it felt like more of anything. It's like play to earn rather than anything like what we've been seeing more recently coming out, being play and earn. I think I like the latter more, but you know,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there are still a lot of like power users that really love Steppen. It's just that the
mm,
ratio of it really it gets skewed when you have that earning aspect of it.
yeah,
I think it does offer a good user experience. It's just what users are looking for get changed a little bit.
yeah. So then, have you seen a good implementation of play and earn or play to earn from your own personal opinion? I guess.
Yeah. So for play and earn, I
Mm,
think something like let me share this real quick. So a lot of Korean conglomerates are coming into the Web3 space with experiments.
interesting.
So recently, I just kind of got into the trend of learning about beacon games. They're on Arbitrum by Treasure DAO. I think that game has generated a lot of hype. And in addition to that, I've also been looking at, I think it's a second country or Nino Goku, which is kind of like a MMORPG setting in a Korean fantasy Japanese style RPG, and that game utilizes kind of commodities, crypto commodities within the game, and has a really good user experience. So those are the two that I personally like a lot, and I think Everseed. I don't know if you guys been checking that game out.
Hmm.
Has pretty good mechanics as well.
Interesting. No, it's very exciting to see a lot of these like new players kind of enter the space and like introduce mechanisms for games that like we would have never even considered before. I think that's just a testament to how early we are in like the whole space in itself. That there's like we're still barely defining what it means to be like an NFT or to use like a crypto collectible in-game asset in a game as an asset, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what's interesting, but at the same time also dangerous where if we are launching games in 2 years' time and
Mm,
kind of imagining what that standard could be, as opposed to in traditional gaming where you're getting real feedback from real players,
true.
real data, like just kind of constantly iterating, I think that should be the way that we approach, despite market conditions as well.
Yeah, but I think that's definitely where we're headed now in the future, right? Before, I'd have to agree with you and say that like everyone was just simply releasing these NFT collections and then promising like the experience of a game later, far later down the road. But now we're actually in the step where like people are coming out with the gameplay experiences, showcasing it to users, and not taking it to heart. Like we're actually getting really close to introducing our own alpha stage for our mobile strategy game Zoolana, where users are going to be able to play it, some of them that we select, and we'll also have the opportunity to kind of take in their feedback and implement and improve our gameplay from it.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I was so excited about your project as well, is because the playability as well as the rollout is really near. And I think a lot of projects are not just thinking about gameplay at this stage; they're
Mm,
also starting to consider what are the distribution channels for my application. How is that user acquisition done in Web2? For example, our Google ad campaign cost was actually very low for our Web3 casual game. So what would that mix of user acquisition strategy be for a game that is launching in this market? So I think those are conversations that we have with our partners as kind of on the sideline or hustling for them. But at the
mm,
same time, because we have that infrastructure set up to really gather, for example, minting data, login data, and stuff like that, we can advise our projects to tell them, hey, you could generate more revenue if you are getting users to log in from this channel, and you can generate more conversion if you are putting in this hint within your game. We see this kind of behavior in your application, and we can get that just from on-chain data as well.
that's a very interesting point. That's a really good point, right? If you have like a comprehensive suite of tools that like users kind of like have to funnel through to experience the overall game, then you can apply that to any of the new projects reaching out to use your SDK, use your framework, right? So
Exactly, and
it's
that's
invaluable.
what Magic Link and Web3 Auth not going to do for you, right? So
Yeah.
even if you use their stack, there's no analytics on how user behavior is because there's no end conversion data.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think that's like half the battle, right? To really realize like where in this point, where in the user's journey are they actually being able to get the full benefits of using crypto assets, right? Rather than it just being a gimmick for the actual game itself.
Exactly. Yeah, totally, totally. I think that sums it up.
Yeah, that's like a very light way to put it. Yeah, no, 100%. It's just that so I mean, I guess if you guys would have to say, and this is I'm more curious about this for my own regard, but like if would you say that there's anyone in the space that kind of like competes with what you guys are doing directly, and like how worried would you be about competitors kind of coming in if there aren't already some in here?
Yeah, of course. So, one, I think the boundary of Web 2 and Web 3 are not going to be as clear in the future,
Mm,
where we're not going to separate Web 2 players from Web 3
yeah.
players. We're gonna not going to separate NFT from just digital assets, for example. So the pie is definitely going to grow. If we imagine 10% of all games will have some sort of crypto elements to it in maybe 10 years' time, then that market is enormous, right? Even
Mm,
just through App Store and Google Play, we are looking at 130 billion of App Store revenue just in last year alone. So I'm not too worried about the market size itself,
yeah.
but we do have competitors, in the space that are not direct competitors because we are a
Mm,
full stack development platform. But something like Stardust, which I respect a lot,
yeah.
does really amazing NFT asset management, but they only do NFT asset management, including like minting, burning with a custodial solution, right? And that has a lot of limitation in terms of your asset management. Um, like for example, developers will be able to technically withdraw user assets, which can be controlled
Oh.
by their database, but there are risks and benefits to that. And I also think that for larger companies, yes, you can use different types of best of breed solutions, pull them together with your kind of like 5 people blockchain team or 10 people blockchain team.
Mm,
But for smaller companies, you just don't have the luxury to do that. And I believe that a lot of really interesting projects will come from not conglomerates coming to the space, but these new devs that are creating new and interesting mechanisms
yeah.
that want to speed up development themselves, right?
So then, do you guys have any plans to like kind of scale out your operations to be able to support like the use of conglomerates in the future, or would you like prefer to maintain like a bespoke solution for smaller developers?
Yeah, so we will be able to support them, but we want to be able to have that user experience, um, just kind of plug and play, as well
Mm,
as self-service model ready first. So how we think about it is like Basecamp. I don't know if you've heard about the SaaS company
yeah.
Basecamp. Yeah, so they grew from a design agency that just made project management for their own purpose and then for their clients, but they never actually prioritize enterprise sales
Mm,
because in the beginning they want the product to be so easy to use and simple so everyone can get a sense of how to use it, and then servicing from that model just becomes really easy with the sales team afterwards. So go to market is definitely our focus in the next stage,
gotcha.
but we are focusing on product development right now.
Gotcha. So then, like, let's say hypothetically, when would this next stage come about? Like, how when would you feel comfortable with your product to get to that
Yeah,
point?
expansion plan is happening in March, so pretty quick next year
Yeah.
with
Oh.
our new chain rollouts.
Okay, and these new chain rollouts will include which chains specifically? That's not planned yet, or not?
Yeah, so it's planned, but I can't
You
do
can't
too many.
disclose. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still gonna
Exciting.
be very bullish on Solana.
Of
Don't
course.
get me wrong,
Yeah.
but we are seeing some inbound from existing clients
Yeah.
that are looking for these types of solutions.
Interesting. No, I'm excited to see kind of like what you guys announce, what you announce, and which chains you plan on incorporating because I have like my own theories about like where a lot of this inbound traffic is going to come from. So I'll have to just keep my eye out then.
Yeah, I mean, I would also love to hear, where is your mindset to? Like, where do you want you guys to move to? Then that could be somewhere we support you guys from.
Yeah, I mean, so we're under the mindset that like it's like you'd have to be you're only limiting yourself if you specifically stay on one chain in the sense of like if you don't leverage like opportunities by going cross chain or multi chain, then
Right.
like you're going to be outdated, obsolete at some point by some other game that is leveraging, right? And like so for now, of course, we're going to be on Solana, and we have like plans to maintain our base on Solana. But as things progress in the future, like there's unlimited possibility for where we do plan on going. Of course, Ethereum would be like a very logical next step, but we'll have to see as we get closer to that point, right? But for myself personally, like I've been very interested in a specific blockchain called Internet Computer Protocol, and I've been seeing a lot of very cool development occurring on that blockchain. So
Yeah. Yeah, ICP is definitely one of the OGs that kind of uh, just like made everyone really excited for a while.
yeah,
Happy to talk about that offline. I'm really excited to see what's new in that ecosystem as well. I don't know too much about it though.
yeah, no, it's very. There's a lot going on in the background there. It definitely had a lot of FUD for a moment, so I'm excited to see that at least the narrative is switching over with everything that's been going on with like the whole FTX fiasco. Are you aware of that at all?
So we are pretty caught up on the FTX thing, but not
Hmm.
too much on the ICP side.
So it's like there was this like whole thing that happened before when ICP first introduced its token, right? It was like valuated at like 700 or like triple digits per token, and then it like instantaneously dumped like after like a day or something like that. And like there was like some like speculation that this was because like FTX artificially inflated the price and valuation of the ICP token through its like perp ICP token, which was like a perpetual,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. And so there's like a huge conspiracy documentation thing that came out recently about that. And so like at first I would have never like I would have been like no, that's not possible. Like why would they do that? But like in light of everything that has been going on within like the whole FTX SBF like fiasco, like I don't really trust their business practices quite as much as I would have before.
Yeah. I'll definitely have to catch up on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But that's a different tangent for an offline conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I'll hit you up after this.
Sure. But I guess we're kind of nearing the end. We got like about 14 minutes left. I guess if you wanted to like tell the audience about anyone who's like actually interested in developing and getting to know more about your platform and leveraging it, where would they go about finding information, kind of signing up, connecting with you guys, as well as like the next best steps for them?
Yeah, so Mirror Matrix is our official account for the SDK, and we actually publish blog posts that averages around 1,000 views per blog posts,
Wow.
and we talk about everything from the benefits of development on Solana to Ethereum, as well as move, for example, new chains. Their how does their language work for the move contracts? Everything that you can learn from, we publish it from the blog. As well, you can just go to mirrorworld.fun, which is our official website, and our dashboard is a self-service plug and play. So you can look at the documentation and just install the SDK, and you can start using it right there from the dashboard. And I think it's a pretty self-explanatory process, and we encourage everyone to start building something with the APIs that we offer. And I think it'll save you a bunch of time.
Amazing, great stuff. Appreciate that. And then this is kind of like a question that kind of just rounds it off. Curious as to if you guys plan on introducing NFTs in any way to kind of like support the community behind Mirror Matrix. Is that something that you guys have looked into or have considered at all? I know a lot of projects do introduce just NFTs for the community aspect.
Yeah, for sure. So we actually started this project by launching our NFT
Mm,
collection that was combined with artificial intelligence. So our OG community held those, and there are a lot of whales still in our community after a year's time. And we've been just quietly building up the entire infrastructure stack. So we want to be focusing on that part of the product. But if you're interested, you can go pick up one of the identity badges as well as the mirror NFTs available on Magic Eden and OpenSea as well. And some there's one partner that we greatly support and we think is going to be very exciting, which is called Night Market. Don't know if you
Nice.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, the Ryan and those guys are great partners, and we think that they're gonna do great things. So they will probably have their own launches. I would just advise our followers to pay attention to that as well.
Nice. Exciting stuff. Yeah, I'm excited for Night Market. That'll be a very interesting drop. I've been
Yeah,
looking
love
forward
the
to that
art
one.
as well.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions. So I'm gonna end this here a little 10 minutes early. We try to keep it at the top of the hour, so we're pretty close now. But I'd like to say first off, I guess we could ask anyone in the audience if they'd like to come up and ask questions. Brick, Didi, Coping. If either of you three would like to come up, please feel free to. If I don't see any hands raised, then I'll kind of just end it off by giving a quick spiel about what's going on with us at Zoolana. We're actually currently in the middle of kind of garnering whitelist interest through our Zani list for our upcoming Zani mint. Zanis are going to be our in-game avatar NFT heroes. And so the whole process behind that is that, or the idea behind that is that these NFT avatars will live with you through your journey in Zoolana, right? And so it made sense for us to kind of incorporate them as NFTs so they can be transferable and they can evolve. So if anyone is interested in kind of participating in our upcoming mint, please do check out our Zani list. You can check the tag within our bio. It'll lead you to a link to apply for Zani, for the Zani list. And then from there, we're also kind of incorporating our Zani list information to create a um, cohesive network of some of like the movers and shakers of the Web3 gaming ecosystem, including you guys. So I'm very happy to have you guys on board with us for that initiative as well. But yeah, everyone listening in, thank you for tuning in and listening. And of course, Mirror Matrix, thanks for taking the time to join us in this conversation. I had a great time chatting with you and asking some questions.
Likewise, and I think a lot of ideology there matches perfectly. So happy to chat offline more. Thanks for having me, and